All right, you guys, welcome back to another episode of Taryn Swears, and a really truly special episode as I get to interview Miss Lauren George, who has become a friend and someone that I actually probably stalked for quite some time, just with her expertise in the fitness industry and just being a fellow serial entrepreneur. You guys are really going to enjoy what Lauren has to share today, but why I really felt connected to Lauren and why I really was excited when she said that she'd come on and chat with us a little bit is she's got such a different perspective than a lot do just because of her history in the fitness industry. She's been a fitness instructor for what, 15 years. She's a
Wow.
serial entrepreneur. So wait till you see her like long list of accomplishments in entrepreneurship, but she's a business coach, she's a mentor, she's a mom, and that's really what I was excited about having on because we can talk about that balance with being an entrepreneur and being a mom. But she's got, you guys, for anyone that's in the fitness industry or is looking to get into the fitness industry or even just an entrepreneur, um, Lauren's been able to create so many trademarked and just like world renowned programming, and she's done it all while she's been raising a family and moving around quite a bit. And how I met Lauren is when she had promoted and talked about Bar Above, and that is well, there's a couple different, I'll let you share that here in a second, Lauren, but there's a number of different fitness dialects that fall under that. But I took that to become a certified bar instructor about 2 years ago. It was probably right in the rise of COVID, as a matter of fact. And, she's also the creator of Pumped Up Strength. If you guys seen me talk a lot about that and been an instructor for that, she created that program. She's a co-creator, as a matter of fact, of Bar Above. So I want to make sure that I was speaking to that. Master trainer for Ballatone, and she owns a virtual studio, LG Fitness Studio. So Lauren, thank you so much for being on and being willing to share. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Tara, and I am thrilled to be here.
Well, I feel like we need to kind of peel back the onion because I love for people to know a bit more about your backstory and really like the rise into your fitness role and how it became basically your job, your career. And I feel like we all have a story of how it came here. So we were just talking a little bit before we hit the record about it, but can you just kind of backpedal a little bit with us so they can get a bit of a behind the scenes on how you got to where you're at?
Of course. I will say I have always loved traditional group fitness. Like I was never a stellar athlete. I love sports. I love to watch sports. I love to play sports, but I was definitely never a superstar athlete. So I really truly always loved exercising purely for recreation. I had my first gym membership as soon as I could drive. I would go to the gym before high school and take, body step classes and all of those group fitness classes, but I never really considered it to be a career possibility until I got to college. And I was just fortunate enough, or I should say, it was divine intervention that my very first semester in college, I took a step aerobics class as my kinesiology, because back then you had to take a kines class. I was actually a political science and Spanish major to start out. I thought I wanted to work in foreign relations, and I had taken Spanish and French all through high school. So I had a lot of language under my belt that I thought I wanted to go on and pursue that. But I took a step class and I realized that, oh my goodness, I could really make a career out of fitness. And I saw what a tremendous impact my professor had. Her name is KB, Kirsten Breckenshea. I still speak to her today. I actually was just with her in February of this year at a conference. And I saw what a huge impact she had on the other individuals in that class and how she taught the girls in my class, because it was all female class, I believe, just by chance. It was a step aerobics class, how she taught them how to enjoy working out purely for recreation. It was how to enjoy doing a step aerobics class just for their health. And I was like, wait a minute, I want to do that for my career. So I changed my major and took a course at the university to become a group fitness instructor. You had to go through a semester long course. It was quite the process to audition to be a fitness instructor at the campus rec center. I think we started out with like almost 100 of us. We took 6 weeks worth of courses. I think about 40 of us tried out and 20 of us made it to be instructors at the university. So it was a great learning experience. And so I worked in campus recreation all through college, learned more about the industry, learned that campus recreation was a whole industry within itself. And so really decided that I wanted to work in campus recreation, went on to be a graduate assistant at the University of North Texas, got married right after college to my high school sweetheart, who also went to A&M, and we moved to Dallas. So I went to grad school in Dallas and worked at a university up there. And then my first job right out of college was running the group fitness program at a really large health club in downtown Dallas. And so I won't go job by job because that could be a whole hour by itself. But the kind of quick synopsis of it was my husband's job. It does have us move quite a bit, very often. And so with every move, I have kind of had to assess the scene, if you will, at every new location. And a lot of times that's been in very small towns. So we went Dallas to Tallahassee, Florida, where I went back to campus recreation at FSU, Florida State University. Then we went to Austin, Texas, where I went back into the private sector, and I helped to run some private Pilates studios. And then to Clemson, South Carolina, where I opened a private group fitness studio. So I owned a brick and mortar studio in Clemson, South Carolina. And then we moved to Starkville, Mississippi in May of 2020, which was interesting in its own right, because literally the world shut down as my husband was interviewing for the job here. I could take my girls to breakfast on Saturday and I couldn't take them for breakfast on Sunday while we were here for his interview. So that was very interesting. But with every move, we've kind of had, or I've personally had to reinvent myself as a fitness professional. And some of my jobs, like working with Barre Above as a co-creator of Barre Above, and I actually created a bar company called Pulse Point Bar while we were in Austin. So before Barre Above, have been transferable, movable, pumped up strength I created while we were here in Starkville, but that started while we were in Clemson, and that was transferable. I also own a company with my business partner, Mariah Seacrest Comer, which we teach fitness business courses and hold fitness business retreats to teach fitness professionals how to grow in their business careers, things like social media and email marketing. And so we host retreats all over the country, teach online courses, do a lot of one-on-one coaching. So obviously I can do that from anywhere. And then my LG Fitness app I can do from anywhere. And now I currently rent space here in Starkville and teach classes in person, and then present at conferences both in person and virtually all over, I guess, really the world now, since you can Zoom me in anywhere. So I have Zoomed into some pretty cool places in the last 2 years. So it's been a really interesting kind of ride to see how the industry has changed, over the last 15 years. And I think sometimes moving can be hard, but I really think it's been such a blessing, because as much as I love campus recreation and I miss it sometimes, I definitely am thankful for the opportunity that moving really brought me, because I probably would have stayed in campus recreation forever because I love it, had I not kind of been forced to jump outside of my bubble and become an entrepreneur really out of necessity, because there wasn't opportunities in the small towns that I moved to a couple of different times, because that was never my intention. I never set out and be like, I'm going to start a business today. There was just kind of a need, and I was like, well, I'm going to figure out how to fill that need, and here we go.
God, I love that. And I feel like you're like the queen of pivot, and just in the last few years that I've known you, and had the opportunity to learn from you, And I think it's because, and I didn't know you back in the day when you were working in campus recreation, but I felt like I've lived vicariously through that, just hearing your stories and learning your backstory. But you've pivoted in this like point in history that almost everyone was like, I don't know what to do. And we are in such a coveted industry that was impacted, not from a business perspective. In fact, I think the health and wellness industry actually really thrived and really always does, because we hit this point where everybody was struggling. And what happens? What's the first thing that happens when people get to this point of just, you know, loss, right? Like they've lost their job or they lost the ability to go into their job. And we tend to just kind of shut down and we don't go to the gym, right? Because we
Right.
couldn't. And so you recognize that those in-person opportunities weren't necessarily available anymore, depending on where you lived, like you weren't able to go and do group fitness in person. And, now that we're hopefully on the other side of that, that's just a whole change, but still you've pivoted and you've been able to grow a business that has adapted to this virtual world. And I think a lot of people have really embraced the ability to work out basically anywhere and find their favorite workout programs, whether it's from their computer or going into a gym setting again, going, oh my gosh, I love Pumped Up Strength. I love that format. I can now go and attend it in person, or heck, I can go and get certified. And
Right.
and so if you guys were taking notes of all the things that Lauren can do for you, we'll make sure to have them in the show notes, because if you are a fitness professional listening to this or want to get into the fitness industry, just, as a side job or just something that you're passionate about, tons of opportunity. And Lauren's a great place to start and go look at all the different dialects of fitness that she does train and teach for. Or if you are a fitness professional wanting to expand on your brand, we'll get some information for you guys on that too. But speaking of pivoting, and we were talking about this before we hit the record button, we are like one and the same in this very moment because we both have little kids parked on the other side of the wall as we
Right.
try and manage a business. And so I really would love to know how, or if you could share really how you were able to pivot in that regard with moving so much, growing a incredible platform to serve not only entrepreneurs in the fitness industry, but also individuals that not necessarily fitness instructors, but want to grow as entrepreneurs. Because I know you serve that, but how did you do all that while you maybe had a kid sick home, or you had kids in tow because they weren't of age necessarily to go to school? So kind of talk to us about how you navigated that all, because it's a lot,
It
right?
is a lot, and I will say it's not always pretty, and I'm sure I have lots to learn. So I don't have it down perfectly. We're all just doing our best. But I will say that, I think so much of it is about logistics and is about being willing to try to figure it out. My motto is kind of like everything is figure outable, and we're just going to figure out how to make it work. I will also say that my husband is such a trooper. He has a extremely demanding job, and is very, very supportive of my job as well. And there's a lot of times that we, both have a kid in tow. But I do think a lot of it is about managing, kind of managing logistics and planning ahead. We are both huge schedule keepers. We compare notes constantly as far as we both travel a lot. So getting those things on the calendar really early. For me, one of the biggest things is managing my creative time, or I call it time blocking. So I know that if I need to do creative work, so things that take maximum amount of brain power, aka I cannot be interrupted with by a kiddo, that has to happen during very certain windows where the kids are either asleep or when they're at school. And when they were younger, that those windows may have been only between 9 and 12 when they were at mother's morning out because they didn't go to school for as long, right? So I'm always very cognizant of the fact that tasks are assigned, or I assign tasks for when they are done during the day based on how much brain power they take. So if it's going to take a lot of brain power, it goes earlier in the day. If it's something like answering emails, it goes later in the day. If it's something like counting songs for choreography, I will always have that with me in a notebook, and that will happen while I'm sitting in carpool. So when I'm doing my to-do list, I will actually assign out when during the day that should get done. So if I know a airplane ride is coming up, I will actually have a to-do list for the airplane ride, because those things don't take Wi-Fi. So that sounds absolutely ridiculous now that I'm saying it,
Right.
but it is, master of logistics. But I also think so, planning out that, and that was, I might be a little bit type A when it comes to those things, but the real takeaway from that is, I think, knowing when your creative windows are, especially when you have kiddos. There's only so much that you can do when you're interrupted every 5 seconds, right? And there are some things that we can do with half brain power that we can do with kids around. And then there are other things that we need full brain power, and we need to schedule those things when kiddos are not interrupting. I think the other thing is, you know, we have always brought our kids with us, right? They've learned how to come to sporting events with my husband. They go to football practice with my husband. They can sit on the other side of a camera, and if they need to watch me film something or go to a fitness conference with me. And so we want them to be a part of it. And while sometimes that might not be like the most fun for them for that 45 minutes, versus them sitting at home with the babysitter, they may have to sit and watch for 45 minutes, but then we can go have family time somewhere fun after that. So I think, we tried to, from an early age, which caused, probably a really lot of headaches for my husband and I from like 2 to 4, tried to, teach them how to behave in public, or how to interact with us while we were at our jobs, so they could be a part of it, which again, there were lots of headaches. That was not easy. So I'm not saying that it's easy by any stretch, but we tried to make them a part of it. So that way our two jobs and the kiddos weren't separate. Because if we're going to be workaholics, which I will 100% admit we both are, we didn't want that to affect our time with the kiddos that much. We wanted to try to make it them part of it as much as possible. So that's our game plan, as much as possible.
I love that you said that. So there's a couple things I wanted to touch on. So remind me, because I want to come back to that time blocking, because I feel like that is such a great tool for anyone, regardless of if they're trying to plan out this career or heck, even their week, right? I talk a lot
Right.
about time management with clients, saying, reverse engineering their week. So I want to come back to that. But
Sure.
I really love what you said, that you include your kids, and your girls are very much a part, and you just kind of figure it out. And you said figure outable, which
Yeah.
I use that word a lot. So you know what? It might just happen to be in the dictionary. Who knows? If not,
Yep.
it should be.
It should.
Um, but I think what's a lot of moms struggle with, and I'm going to speak mostly to the moms, because you know what? That's what I am, and that's what I know.
Right.
And you too. But we have these careers, or we have these businesses that we run from home, or a job that's from home. And we've got a kid that is going to be sick. So that kind of foils the idea, and the looking forward to, okay, I have this time, this allocation to do this, or this, and it's your creative time, or it's your filming time for you. For me, it's like, okay, I've got this podcast interview I'm really excited about. And, I get to drop the kids and come home and grab my cup of coffee and just sit and just be in the moment before we go live. And that didn't get to happen today. And so we all have to learn how to adjust and pivot. I know I mentioned that earlier. But I think a lot of us um, have a hard time balancing this whole, but I work, but I have kids home. So maybe talking to the parents that have younger kids, and they're afraid to do their work because they don't want their kids to feel like they're not present with them, and they're neglectful of them. And there's been such a shift in society over the years, even well before COVID, I think, that more and more parents are working from home, and companies are offering little bit more flexibility. And I do think that COVID did bring to light the opportunity to know that, you know what, everybody might have a kid that's going to run right behind them in the middle of a Zoom call that was not planned. And, then we just start panicking and freaking out. But I love how you include the kids. And so people that are there with you, or you're filming a workout, um, how do they, like, what is their kind of, not, and they've been raised with it, so might not be anything, they don't know any different, but what would be one thing that you would maybe say to a mom that is working from home or is starting a career and has young children, and maybe this is like, I don't want them to feel like I need to stuff them with Oreos on the couch just to keep them distracted, because kids are really intelligent. And if anything, I've got the 6-year-old up to the 16-year-old. And so they all know that this is what I do. And I'm home all the time. And it's not like mommy's sitting on the couch watching soap operas and eating chocolates all day while you're at school. And when you're home, that's not what mommy's doing either.
Right.
Like you, I'm a workaholic. I'm not the one that's on the floor doing puzzles and art projects. And I don't want, I'm, it took me a long time to kind of overcome that, but I never was that mom, and I never wanted to be that mom. And I had a lot of guilt with that. So, maybe kind of framing that, how to balance those two feelings. I know I'm kind of taking a little bit of a different direction here, but being the workaholic, because it's okay to own the fact that you're a workaholic, and I love that you own it, because you do actually have a really good balance with how your girls are included. So there's still a lot of family time, but how to kind of embrace that and balance it with this idea that it's okay to be a workaholic, and it's okay to want to build a career or a business and even still have your kids in tow or your kids around. So what would you be kind of I don't know, the advice that you would give somebody, a mother that might be looking to do that regardless of how old their kids are? And maybe we start with the younger aged kids.
Sure. Yeah. And I think, well, first I'll say I still have massive mom guilt all the time. And I still worry that, I'm not doing it right, or that they are going to resent me one day. I think all moms probably do that. And I think there, different styles work for different people. But I will say what I try to remind myself is you are right. I am a workaholic. I do try to own it as much as possible, or be okay with it, because I love my job. And I think that's what I hope my kids see. And I know my oldest sees it because she has fun with me doing my job. I know my youngest, she's so laid back. I don't know that she cares either way. She's like, whatever. But my oldest loves fitness. She loves music. So I think she understands why I enjoy it, which is really fun. So but I want them to see, that mommy works hard and that she loves what she does, and that when they go to pick their career, that they should love what they do. But when it comes to balancing work and family time, I do work from home. I do travel a lot, a little bit less these days, but I mean, there were definitely times that I traveled a lot, and they were little sometimes when I traveled a lot. I'm blessed with an amazing mother-in-law who would come and stay with us, but there was definitely some mom guilt there. But when I am home, and since I do work, I don't ever have to miss a school party, and I go to every single practice, and I am able to go to every school Veterans Day performance, so it's a give and take, and it's what works for our family. But my 8-year-old can work a camera and stand behind the camera and help me with it, and she loves that. And she's like, oh mom, this is good lighting, we should totally take a picture here for your class. Or she can count out a 32 count song and pick a squat song, and she gets excited if I use a song she recommends, in a class. So showing that I value their opinion, and like I said, trying to make them a part of it. And my husband does the same. When he is at a sporting event, they walk around with him and check on the facilities, and they can go to practice with him, versus staying at home. And so it is integrating them into both of our jobs, which not every job is able to do that. But I do think, one, knowing that no matter what we do, we're going to have mom guilt, and then two, showing our kids that hard work is important. Having a good work ethic is important. And then I also want to show them that I want whatever career they pick, I want them to enjoy their job. Both my husband and I love our jobs. And I want them to want that whenever they pick their careers. So we just are all, doing the best that we can. And sometimes they're like, oh my gosh, do we have to, go to this? But yesterday, we were talking about it yesterday. My daughter woke up with a fever, and she just had a fever. She wasn't super sick. So I was supposed to teach a 4-hour virtual certification, but she was perfectly okay. And half the time, my filming studio, which is on the other side of my office. So it goes my office, my filming studio, and then her playroom. And since I'm mic'd up, you can't hear background noise. And so she was just on the other side of the camera playing with her American Girl dolls or sleeping on the couch, which I could also see. And she was perfectly fine. And there were a couple of times she would come and ask me a question, and I told the people that I was training, like, my daughter is home, so there might be once or twice that I have to go check on her. And she actually was, I gave them 2 breaks during the certification anyways, and I just would check on her during that certification, and I mean during those breaks. And she was great. And like you said, people are pretty used to it. And if I was taking a certification and the instructor had that going on behind them, it wouldn't faze me at all. So I think we're just, all doing the best that we can.
And I think it's so refreshing too, when you see somebody, and you're sitting there intently listening, or you're in a meeting and somebody's, kid runs by, like, it's refreshing because I always feel like it's me, the one having to, like, shh, or if it's not a kid, it's a
Right.
dog, right? In my case, so I'll have a dog right here next to me, or a kid that needs something. But, that's kind of a part of this whole process. And, it's, if anything, in these last few years, it's taught a lot of us that are entrepreneurs how to kind of work with what we have, and pivot when we need. So when we've got kids home, we have to learn how to pivot in our day. And I still, I really want to come back to this time blocking, because I think that makes such a difference, and you can still adhere to it even if you've got a change in plans. But I think a lot of us have this guilt of wanting to start something because it's going to take away from our ability to show up to the things that are important. And I think it's just a matter of prioritizing.
Mhm.
I've got a girlfriend that she and I met through the fitness industry as well, like 10 years ago. And, we would have a lot of conversations about not feeling like we could work when the kids were home because we felt bad taking time away from them. And, instead of including them or talking to them about it, which I had basically an opportunity to redo that when we had our second batch of kids, and now they're very much part of it. So knowing we've got very similar aged kids, my 8-year-old, she loves to be a part of and have a say in things when I'm either dressing for something, or, hey, mommy's got to teach this class. What do you think about this? And they love that they get to play my music that might be for a class that I'm preparing for. But going back to the time blocking, and for those that, like, kind of explain how you came up with time blocking. And it's pretty self-explanatory what it is, but, like, what are your best practices when it comes to time blocking, whether it's for planning out your week or just even like family stuff? Like, how do you kind of sit down, like, take us through like an example of your time blocking, if you could?
Sure. Well, I can't take credit for it. I'm pretty sure. So there was a book, I believe it's called Get SHIT. We won't
Oh
make
yeah.
it a podcast explain
People know that I got
explicit.
F bombs. That's okay.
So, and really, so the idea behind that is not really about time blocking, but the premise behind that book is that your brain gets distracted or it cannot completely focus if you're pretty much holding on to your to-do list mentally. And so the thought process behind the book, or the main premise behind the book, is that you should brain dump everything in your brain onto a to-do list like multiple times a day, so you're not trying to hold on to it. So step one in my time blocking is I use an app called Gtask app, and it's like $4.99 a year. It just works for me. Some people probably have written down to-do lists, or they keep it in their notes section of their phone, but I like the Gtask app because I can schedule things for ahead of time, which works in for my time blocking, because I can know that, like, I'm going to have X amount of time on Wednesday. So first of all, I write everything down. I mean, it can be like, you need to switch the laundry, but I'm at Kroger and I know I need to do it when I get home. So I'm like, oh, let me write that down. Yeah. But then I'll schedule it for when I know I'm going to be home. So really the big thing for me is keeping my to-do list app up to date. But with that, when I'm thinking through my to-do list, and if it's an item on my to-do list that I know is too big for me to get done that day, then I will think through, okay, well, how much time is that going to take me? Like, how many minutes or hours is that going to take me? And then how much creative time is that going to take me? So, for example, one of the things on my to-do list right now is to finalize the choreography for my next Bar Above release. I know that's going to take quite a bit of creative power, and I need to get it done before without kids interrupting me. So I have that scheduled actually for tomorrow morning before I take the kids to school. So I'll get up early, I'll get it done, get it filmed, and then I'll get the kids up for school. We'll carry on with our day. So I will have that scheduled into my Gtask app for Thursday morning at X amount of time. So when I'm thinking through that creative blocking, and I usually sit down on Sundays with my calendar and I'll already have all my meetings in for the week. So, like, I'll have this podcast scheduled in, I'll have meetings with my Clemson students because I'm still adjunct faculty at Clemson University too. I teach nonprofit leadership for them. So, I'll have, like, those hard things when I teach my classes or teach my group fitness classes. And so then I look at the empty times and I will go in and block out, like, meetings when I need the most creative time, like coming up with choreography or writing new educational programming or whatever that may be, when I know I need the dedicated, uninterrupted time. I schedule those blocks for projects like meetings, and then other smaller items on my to-do list, like running errands or answering emails or grading papers or things that don't require quite as much brain power will go on what we consider kind of more like of a normal to-do list that can be checked off as we have time. But then I also have my kind of like mini to-do list where I always have something with me in my bag for when I'm waiting in carpool or when I have 45 minutes while the girls are in gymnastics. I always have things that can be done during those downtime. So it's almost kind of like I'm running 3 different types of to-do lists at all times.
Well, I feel like I just was writing a bunch of notes because just those little tiny, like, oh my God, that makes so much sense that instead of wastefully scrolling social media when the girls are in gymnastics or dance class or you're waiting to pick up a kid, like, that could be useful proactive time, whether it's creating your shopping list or even taking the moment to go to the grocery store and pick off something, right? Instead of having to sit there. I mean, depending on what the practice is and the age of your children, I know that
Right.
that makes a difference as well. But I love, so G task, you said it was called, and we can,
Gtask. It's like a little green actually, and I just got a notification right here. So lowercase g, capital T, ASKS.
okay. Well, we'll include that in the show notes too, so someone can go and refer to it right away in their app store. But brain dumping, I feel like, is a game changer for me,
Game.
regardless of what it is. And I have probably like 8,000 of these yellow notepads around my house. I'm a pen and paper person, but I'm also a visual person on my phone. Because do you find that, like, the most random things come to you? It's,
Oh,
oh,
yes.
I'm driving, which
Mhm.
is not a good time for a
Right.
creative idea, or, oh yeah, I should do this. The shower, because,
Right.
wouldn't you be creative in the shower when you don't have anything to
Definitely.
write it down with, right? So, let me ask you this on the creativity part, because when you time block your opportunity to be creative, do you find that you can turn on your creativity like that, or are there certain, let me ask you, times in the month? Because I will say that there's times of the month that I am far more creative and motivated than other times. There's just times that I'm like, you can't even tell me to go start a project because I can't even think of a social post that I want to do this week. The creativity's not there. So how do how can you turn that on? Or do you find that, like, okay, I look at a month block and go, you know what, this is when I tend to be my most creative. Like, how do you juggle that?
Well, just in general, I would say I tend to be most creative in the morning, kind of afternoon. It's like a downhill slide.
Yeah.
But there are definitely times where I feel like I'm trying to force it, especially when it comes to if I'm working on like a new workshop or before a conference, if I'm putting pressure on myself, right? So before going to a fitness conference where I'm like, okay, I really have to like wow these instructors, I want to give them new material. And sometimes it just like doesn't come, like it's like writer's block, right?
Yep.
um but then maybe I'm doing my own personal workout and I come up with a new exercise, and then it's just like a waterfall of ideas. And so a lot of times, if especially if it's fitness related, if it's choreography related that I'm having a block, I will schedule my own workout during my most creative time and just lay out all of the pieces of equipment that I may want to use and just start doing my own workout. And that will sometimes spark my creativity for coming up with ideas, but I don't really put the pressure on myself to like write out the choreography. It's like, let's just start moving, because we all know, a lot of times the best exercise or the best ideas come to us when we're running because we get those creative juices flowing. So a lot of times I will just go into my own workouts with kind of not a plan and see where it takes me. And a lot of times that will take me to creative places if it is a choreography block that is happening to me. I and then if it's, other things that I'm trying to be creative on, yeah, it just kind of depends for sure. How much sleep I have can definitely affect creativity.
Oh my God.
But
I
definitely if, that kind of morning to mid-morning time, I know I'm gonna have the best luck for sure.
I agree wholeheartedly. I feel like I reserve that time after the kids go off to school, come back,
Yes.
kind of collect myself. And I'm a morning workout person, and most people that follow me known that for years. I mean, even before I had kids, my husband and I would go downtown and work out at the club, and then I would get showered and go to work. That's when I feel the most creative. And I feel like, anyone that's kind of in that block of lack of motivation, it's that encouragement, like go outside and go for a walk,
Right.
go just move your body. Those endorphins just have this magical power to stimulate something inside of you. And even if it's just a change in gears, change in scenery that just supports that kind of little shift that needs to happen. And then it's get out your, 18 yellow pads that might be scattered throughout the
Find
house.
my stack of notebooks back behind me here.
Yeah, and write it out,
Right.
but you brought up something that was something that I really wanted to ask you about as well. We talked about before we hit record is because of your career and your businesses that you own and manage and co-own, um, excuse me, um what's the I guess I'm trying to think how the best way to ask this, but how do you find that? How have you treated that relationship with your own workouts different than what you do to present to other professionals or even to those that are showing up to want to take your classes? Like, what's that different? How has that been different for you treating your own workout versus the professional side of Lauren?
Sure. I definitely still, even more so now, than in, I guess, maybe my earlier years. My own workouts are so much more important to me from a mental standpoint, and a sanity standpoint. I've always been a very firm believer that I'm teaching for my participants. That's not my own workout. So I've always thought that, and so worked out on my own from a physical standpoint, just to get in my own workout. But now it's I think it's even more about the mental aspect of getting in my own workout, having that time for myself, because I feel like the second, 6:30 a.m. rolls around, it's like a madhouse until 11:30 p.m. rolls around again. So having that kind of quiet time by myself is really important. I would say for the majority of my personal workouts, I'm either lifting or I have a reformer here at my house, and those are my most precious um, solo workouts are lifting alone or doing the reformer. And so that's just for my body, that I kind of balance out what I, maybe do too much of in class because I, am teaching a lot of one format, or I do everything on my right side because then I'm coaching when everyone's doing their left side or whatever it is. I use my personal workouts to balance that out, or just for my sanity, or if I'm feeling particularly tight, or what have you. So I use my personal workouts for that.
I love it. So would you say, is there any style of workout? So take away, so if we remove all of the certifications and programming that you do, right? Just for Lauren's own joy and maybe what you want for your body, has there been a certain style of workout that you've really spent a lot of energy on, or that you've found to enjoy or see the fruits of your labor, transform as a result of doing that style more so than others in the past?
Definitely. I mean, definitely when I started lifting more weights here in the past 3 years, that's when my body really started to change and respond to that. And I think we all know as females that how important it is to lift weights. And I always have loved to take group strength classes. Um, I think I wasn't ever lifting probably quite heavy enough or as consistently because I was teaching so much. But then when we moved to Mississippi and I sold my studio, I had a lot more time to just focus on my own workouts because I wasn't teaching 15 classes a week, probably for the first time in 15 years. Because I had only taken, I think I took 6 weeks off when I had each girl. But other than that, I had taught full time my whole career. And so I really had time to just do my own workouts and probably let myself recover for the first time in 15 years. And so strength training really has been something that I had time to focus on and has been a huge game changer for myself and my body. If I had to pick the workout that I love to take more than teach, which I love to teach it, but I really love to be a student, that would definitely be reformer Pilates.
Oh, really?
Which
Huh?
I'm certified on all the
Yeah.
equipment, Cadillac, all the shebang, for probably like 10 years, but I love to be a student on that.
It's funny. Somebody asked me not too long ago, what I like about, teaching, but also, what are my favorite workouts? And when I'm not teaching, I said, what my favorite workout is? The one that I'm not programming and that I
Right.
can just show up and do, right? And, for so many years, and even still existing on my own virtual studio as well, is the programming of different workouts, and which still there's a lot that goes into programming workouts, even taking these certifications that you offer. Because, when you teach all these amazing formats and then you're like, okay, well, I got to make them different. So each week isn't the same, so there's still a lot of thought that goes into it and memorization and all that kind of stuff. But, my favorite workout is showing up to a workout that I didn't have to think about, which is really actually, that's what I appreciate about being a coach at F45, because I don't have to think about programming because there's so many other programming and things that we're thinking outside of that.
Right.
But just to highlight your piece on strength training for women, I would love a little nugget of advice for those that are just can't get out of that whole like queen of cardio world, because cardio gets them sweaty. It's probably the number one thing that I hear most out of women is their favorite workout is cardio because they sweat so much more, and everyone loves that feeling of sweat. Like, you love the accomplishment after a 45-minute sweat session. And you and I both know that we could take Barre and sweat our, what's off. We can pumped
Oh
up
yeah.
strength. I'm a dripping mess, and that is all, you have a weight in your hand entirely. But how would you help someone understand the importance, but what would be your just advice on incorporating strength training into women our age, mid 30s to mid 40s, even more?
Sure. Yeah. And I understand, and I really relate to that feeling. I mean, I have 2 degrees in kinesiology and sport management. I knew from my early 20s how important strength training was, but I love to run. I love the endorphin high. I love cycling. I've had a cycling, it's like right there and next to me in my office, a bike. So I totally can relate to exactly what you're describing. I get that. I love the feeling of a hard workout, and of being super sweaty, and also can relate to having grown up and struggled with body image issues most of my entire life, and that feeling of that need to burn a ton of calories, or having been told that in our youth and our early 20s and all of that stuff. So I totally understand. And then when our age group was in our teens and early 20s, we don't lift heavy weights, you don't want to bulk up, and all of those things that we're having to now rewire ourselves, right? But it is so important for so many reasons. And it's funny because I actually posted a reel on this exactly today, like 5 reasons we should all strength train. But take out the vanity reasons, right? And you have it's important for increasing bone density. It can prevent injury. It can help increase our confidence. It can actually, there are so many very interesting studies about how resistance training is even, or could possibly be even better than cardio for staving off Alzheimer's, which I had a grandmother that passed away from Alzheimer's. So I think that's extremely interesting. But going back to what it can do for our own bodies, is it really is, when you have more lean muscle mass, we all know that we burn more calories at rest. And so personally, once I stopped doing so much cardio and started lifting heavier and much more frequently and consistently, the amount that I work out now from the amount that I worked out even just 3 years ago versus, and we don't want to talk about the scale, but I'll go there if we need to go there to convince some people, how my body composition has changed now versus where it was 3 years ago. And if you looked at the minutes purely that I work out now versus 3 years ago, there's really no comparison to, what strength training can do and the results of it, and how important it is, especially, as our hormones change, as we start to lose muscle mass, especially once we, get 30s, 35, 40s, 45s and on. It really just is so important for our body composition and helping us to keep our metabolism going. And I mean, just helping us to feel strong. I actually made a joke about it in the reel today. It's like, I don't want anybody to come up and ask me if they need to carry a box for me or to carry something heavy. Somebody asked me last week if they needed me to carry, if I needed them to carry something. And I was like, no, I do not need you to carry this. I got this. Like, no, I don't need you to carry it for me. So there are just so many reasons. And I think once people start to strength train consistently, how you feel, I mean, it feels good to feel strong. Feels so good.
Yeah, it totally does. And you hit some really good hot buttons there too. And we'll wrap up here shortly, but because I think it's so important for women to understand that hormonally, because that's a lot of what I talk with women is hormones and understanding how nutrition has a big effect on it, but also your workouts and how they impact your hormones and the longevity of them. And those that have gone through so many hormone challenges with either getting pregnant, postpartum, or just even metabolism because they've had so many hormone deficiencies, strength training has become such a amazing complement to, kind of bringing things back to light. Because I think for years it was, cardio, everything, cardio strips calories, cardio strips, body fat, blah, blah. But the more that we've learned and the more that we bring to light about truly the impact of strength training as it relates to our body composition and not so much the number on the scale. And I think a lot of us do go, well, if the number on the scale is not changing, then something's not working. Instead of looking to really the intricacies behind that number and what's making up that number. Because we know the scale is just a measurement of mass, right?
Right.
Like it's just a measurement of mass. Like you could put my cup of coffee on a scale and I'll be a measurement of mass. That's not going to really tell us anything about how much cream I have in here or not, or coconut oil or sweetener, like it doesn't tell you anything except for the measurement of mass. And so when we talk about body composition, like that is like the creme de la creme. And that's really where I want the excitement of women to feel that the work is paying off, because you can go do cardio until you're blue in the face and sweat your guts out and have massive water depletion, but if you're not building up lean muscle and supporting your joints and your bone health and your brain function and your hormone function, and I mean, the laundry list of things that weight training does, then that body composition is really what we need to emphasize as we get older, because carrying the excess body fat is not going to fare well for us as we, because it's harder to lose weight when you get older,
Right.
but it's not so much losing weight, it's losing body fat and then also building up the lean muscle, which we know are two very different components, but they all, work one and the same with the complement of nutrition and weight training. So I love that you spend that you've seen that change in your body composition, metabolism, energy, and all that in the last 3 years that you've added strength training. And you said you've lifted heavier, your frequency of lifting, and your consistency of it. So those were three really main pieces that just like light bulbs went like off left, right, and center, is that you've lifted heavier, you've lifted more frequently and consistently. So what's your sweet spot when you say frequently? So how many days a week are you strength training?
So at least 3 to 4.
Love it.
Hmm.
Good for you. And are some of those days more like your emphasis on heavy lifting versus kind of more volume training?
Yes. Hmm.
Love it. See, I feel like we could have gone down this whole rabbit hole of strength training right out of the gates. Should have,
Right.
but I feel like we came here, at the most appropriate thing, and there was so much that came into building and understanding, the person that you are and why I think you're so special and what you've taught me in building a fitness career, but also reflecting on the importance of prioritizing our own workouts and what they bring and do for ourselves. Because much like we might have kids sitting behind the wall as we're doing an interview, or behind the camera as we're filming for our workout, or doing our Zoom call, we're also influencing them to understand the value of our bodies and really truly what we need to nourish them, right? And not only from a brain and the ability to empower them to know you can do whatever you want. You could go to school, you can go to college with a political science degree, and that's what you want to do, but it's okay to decide, I actually switched gears and I want to do this,
Amen. Yes, exactly.
right? And so my heart sang a little bit when you said that, because I went into college with an econ major. I don't know what the hell I was thinking and what I was going to do with an econ major. And then I graduated 4 years, it only took me 4 years, but I graduated with a general studies degree with an emphasis in human development and communication. And I'm like, what is even that? People are like, what did you graduate with? Did you do anything with your undergrad? I was like, nope. I went into
Yeah.
commercial real estate and then I went into fitness. So you know what? It is what it is.
My husband makes fun of me all the time because he was like, you would have literally been the worst politician ever. You would have told everybody that they were mean, and you would have been a horrible like liar. You would have gone nowhere. I was like, I would have been the worst politician for sure. Like for sure. I would have been eaten alive in like 5 seconds.
Oh God.
No doubt.
But you know what? You ended up where you're supposed to be, and you really
Exactly.
truly shine such a bright light on
Thank
fitness, and you make fitness really truly enjoyable. And I'm not just saying that because I have you here. I mean, I've so enjoyed learning, because I think that's one thing as a fitness instructor. And you can go and take all your certifications through ACE, NASM, I mean AFA, whatever certifications, and you could learn it textbook. But it's the personality that comes behind it, and also just like the wholesome of it, like the full circle of it, right? Like fine, you can do it as a career and teach other people and inspire them, but like what it does and brings to you as the individual, and how you exude that out into the community is just, it's such a unique ability to be able to do that. And I mean, you do it effortlessly, and it just really takes like You know, you get on your camera and you just see that instant smile out of Lauren. If you guys are not watching on YouTube and you're hearing this, you guys have to go follow Lauren on Instagram, which can you share what your Instagram is so they can go see your latest reel you just mentioned?
Yes, yes. I'm easy to find. I'm just Lauren George Fitness.
Awesome. I'll make sure to have that in the show notes as well, because you guys, she's just a wealth of information, whether you are wanting to start out in a fitness career, maybe you want to go and become a group fitness instructor on the side because you already work full time in your career, or you want to maybe, expand on your entrepreneurial skills. Lauren's got pretty much everything covered under the gamut regarding fitness all the way into entrepreneurship. So she's a wealth of information and just such a lovely person to know. So I'm honored that you took time to come on here and share, and that we've become friends over the last few years, that I've been able to learn from you. Because I always love being a student. I think that's important for people in their professions, is to be willing to be a student always, because we don't always know everything and anything. There's always going to be something that we can take and learn. So I appreciate all that you continue to learn so you can give that to the rest of us.
It was so my pleasure. And you teach me things all the time. And was honored to come on for sure. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so one last thing, because I want all my guests to be able to share something. So if you were to give one little nugget that somebody could finish this podcast listening and go do right away, an actionable thing, what would be the one thing that you would want someone to walk away with?
Sure. Well, since we talked so much about time blocking, I would say when you sit down at the end of the day today to dump your to-do list, I want you to think about your 3 most important things that you need to get done the rest of the week, and then schedule them in your most creative time. So think through Thursday and Friday, or whatever your next 2 days are when you're listening to this podcast, because we're filming this on a Wednesday. So whatever your days are for the next 2 to 3 days, and schedule those 3 things in your most creative time so that you can get them done.
Gold. Like, everybody, regardless of what you do, anyone can do that. If you have kids running around and that's what you need to manage is your kids' schedules, then sit down and do that. So thank you, Lauren. You're amazing. I really appreciate you. And best of luck of everything that you've got coming on board and finishing out through the end of the year. Again, you've got so much information and just a wealth of knowledge. So thank you for teaching me what you have.
Thank you so much, Taryn. I appreciate it.
All right, you guys, make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss another episode. And you can go find Lauren on all of her social handles and her website I will have here in the show notes. And until next time, you guys, have an awesome rest of your day. And thank you for being here and listening. We'll talk soon.